Welcome everyone to This Is Us podcast. We are excited much to be here another week, another episode to have conversations around real issues, have conversations with the real people who are in these situations, who have expertise and who are experts in their field and have knowledge to talk about the areas in which we bring up that are of concerns that are happening to families, to society. And as we share our story, we hear stories, and as we journey along, we have people who are also journeying. And tonight we're excited to have another guest here with us, very close from the bloodline. And I'm excited to have my sister here with me tonight on This Is Us. Kediesh, nice to have you with us tonight. And tonight we are going to be talking about something that is very sensitive, very intimate, something that can affect individuals collectively, as a family, and as a society. And we all know the society in which we now live, and how tonight's topic is so critical in how we navigate what's happening in our society, in our families with us. And that's what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about emotions and how our emotions form a part of who we are, how they can spiral out of control, how we can manage them, what it looks like when somebody is emotionally healthy, how it looks like when somebody is emotionally unstable, what does their life look like, their relationships, interpersonal, personally, within their families, within their society. And so tonight we're going to touch on that topic. Someone who is emotional, who has been emotionally neglected and now suffer from, the effects, negative effects of being emotionally abused or neglected. And tonight, I have my sister here with me, as I said before, my esteemed guest, and I just want to officially introduce her. I should know everything about her, right? But I had to just write it down because, we're so multi-talented. So tonight we have Kediesh Berry-Rattray with us. Kediesh Berry-Rattray is a trained and practicing guidance counselor who is also a trained life coach. She works with men, women, children, and adults to get them from where they are to where they want to be, one goal at a time. She has worked in the infant, primary, and secondary sector of education and is currently at the Cedar Grove Academy, where she is the guidance counselor with responsibility for upper school. Mrs. Berry-Rattray enjoys watching documentaries and meeting new people. This she attributes to her warm and fun-loving personality. She's a past student of the Teachfield High School, which has positioned her for her studies when she started college at Jamaica Theological Seminary. Big up all the seminarians out there, where she did her Bachelor's of Arts in Guidance and Counseling. She loves cooking and baking, but unfortunately, don't do it as often as she would want to. She's married and is an unapologetic believer in the gospel of Christ. Welcome and good night, Kediesh Berry-Rattray, my sister, to This Is Us podcast. Finally, you are here with us. As we approach episode 11, we have gone through so many exciting conversations over the past weeks. We talk about different topics that affect each of us in a different way. And tonight is no different. You're in the education system. You're in the field of the helping profession. And tonight we're going to be talking about a huge topic. It's so multifaceted. It has so many pieces. And sometimes when those pieces fall apart or they're misplaced or they're loosened, you know, what can happen? And we're talking about our emotions. We're talking about an emotionally neglected person. What does this look like? And so tonight, tell us, what is emotional neglect? What is that?
All right. So good evening, Latoya. Good evening, Teddy. It's a pleasure being here with you all this evening as we discuss this topic. So emotional neglect is where a person's feelings, a person's emotions are oftentimes rejected or disregarded and invalidated. And so they oftentimes they themselves sometimes end up not valuing their own feelings, you know, and then it can spiral out of control and it can lead to many different things, some of which we will share tonight.
Hi, Kediesh, and good evening to everyone. It's good to be back with you again. Good to have you, Kediesh. All right, so you've given us the introduction just a little bit about what is emotional neglect. I came across an article from Psychology Today that I found particularly interesting, which led to us having this focus this evening.
Right.
So I want to start with some scenarios or case studies, if you will. Just share 3 of them. They started the article with. So the article is on Psychology Today, as I indicated. Lauren and Rachel are good friends and have known one another for years. Lauren feels like she can go to her friend for advice and often remarks on how Rachel is such a good listener. But recently, Lauren has noticed she shares quite a bit more than Rachel and actually doesn't know much about Rachel's personal life. She begins to question their friendship. So that's Lauren and Rachel. Mike is the other one. Mike is a competent project manager who gets along well with the employees that work below him. He's respected for his hard work ethic and dedication to his projects. Recently, his supervisor has noticed that Mike has difficulty when conflicts arise among his team. Mike grows extremely uncomfortable when issues are brought to his attention. As a result, there are multiple unresolved conflicts that are interfering with the workplace environment. And the third and last one, Antonio. Antonio is growing frustrated with his girlfriend when it comes to making decisions. Claudia often deflects when he asks her what she wants, and Antonio is left to pick the meals, plan outings, or even choose what shows they watch together. He finds himself attempting to mind read since Claudia seldom shares how she feels. And the question posed by the article is, what do Rachel, Mike, and Claudia have in common? On the outside, they seem to have it all together, but the people around them slowly uncover areas in which they struggle. And these cracks in their foundations stem from childhood emotional neglect. So 3 different scenarios, 3 different case studies, but the article is positing that what these 3 sets of persons are exhibiting, their behavior, is as a result of a foundational issue, emotional neglect, and it is being traced all the way to childhood.
Right back to the childhood.
Is there truth to that theory? Is that a solid theory? How significant is the emotional bonding and a child receiving emotional connection? How significant is that to what happens to them as an adult? These are all adults here. What's happening here? What's up with that?
All right. So in all scenarios, there are clear signs and evidence of emotional neglect. So one would have pointed to avoiding conflict or
Right.
having hard conversations. One would point to invalidated feelings and so forth. And we find that the reason why this tracks back to the childhood is because that child, or rather that person, didn't learn to express themselves. They didn't learn to know that it is okay to feel. They didn't learn how they can express themselves. And so when that tends to happen, you find that some persons start to suppress their true feelings and even their true thoughts. And there are actually theories and psychologists too, and studies would have even stated that some emotional neglect can even lead to mental issues.
Well, absolutely.
Very serious.
You take if we want to take the extreme of antisocial behavior,
Right.
and even we call it the serial killers, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Borderline.
Borderline personality disorder, and those who go on to be serial killers. A lot of the longitudinal studies, long-term studies that have been done on such persons, the lack of emotional connection seems to always emerge as a common factor.
Right. And also cognitive and emotional delay as well in children, that is. So the cognitive delay would, of course, affect their speech. And of course, most times once speech is delayed, then sometimes learning is actually delayed. So parents have to find ways in which they can validate their children's feelings. Don't disregard how they feel, you know. And sometimes we find that as a people, Caribbeans, Jamaicans, we tend to shun emotion.
You are hitting the point right there, because I was about to say that to make a point.
Yeah.
I remember, and some things we just take for granted, some things we think doesn't make any sense at the time, until afterwards you said, oh, this led to that. Because I know growing up, and even when going to infant school, basic school, when we're introduced to the different faces, a smiley face, a sad face, an angry face, an upset face, you know, and these help us to understand what we're feeling at the time. So if a child may be upset or maybe sad or happy, they can point to the face or the faces that would express or means what they're feeling. And sometimes these things, and I'm looking back and saying, wow, these things really help children to express what they are feeling. So as small as a child, you know what happy is, what sad is, and it's very important to be able to identify what you're feeling, when you're feeling, and for the adults to know, step in and say, okay, you're happy. That's good. What makes you happy? Or, you know, you're sad now. What is it that happened? Or, for example, as a parent who may have a child who is disruptive, or a child who's having an issue, if they make an outburst, or we feel as if the child is overreacting, we don't stop to think or to say as adults, as parents, all right, we want to quickly calm down the child, just calm down. But the child just wants to express, you know, I am upset about this, or I am angry about this situation. So we don't try to identify, help the child identify, you know, what's causing this sadness, what's causing you to be angry. Maybe something that I said yesterday, last week, that the child is still trying to grapple with, and everything the parents say after that just further upsets the child. And so so many things get built up. And then the child just bottles up everything because we move from sad, frustrated, unhappy, upset, and the child, and just into adult life now. And as you said earlier, the child bottles that up and now is spiraling out of control because mommy didn't realize I was upset, angry. We didn't talk about the elephant in the room. We didn't discuss or help me to navigate through these feelings. And now child becomes an adult, and now the society and relationships and families, and even that individual is in so much trouble, and now damage control may take forever, So all these things are happening, and you as a guidance counselor in the education system, I'm sure you see many of that behavioral outbursts.
Yeah.
Or being showcased rather at schools now from the various levels. So when those issues come in front of you, those individuals come in front of you, what do they look like? How far are they coming from?
Yeah, what are some of the manifestations that you experience
and how far
as an educator?
All right, so I would just like to add to that they're not always aggressive, because there are some passive forms as well. And being withdrawn, and then of course you have the self-soothing behaviors. So as a child, some of those self-soothing behaviors, maybe some sucking and biting the nails, and even signs some persons may misread as autistic behaviors like rocking and making cooing sounds to themselves. And as you get older, some of these soothing tends to change a little. They may become, you may eat more than you regularly eat.
Right. The comfort foods, eh?
Right, comfort food. So you prefer sweets and so forth. Those are self-soothing type of behaviors as you get older into adulthood. Some persons overspend, all right?
Yes.
Because they just want to pacify themselves.
Yeah.
And of course, you would have shared some of the aggressive forms, such as fights, feeling angry, even when you don't know why you're angry, you are just angry, and so on. And of course, we have others such as attachment issues as well. Just to share, quite recently, a male student, we have someone at our school on practicum, right? And I was, the male entered my office and I was introducing him to her, and he looked at me in a funny way. And I was like, what is it? And he said, Miss, you leave? And I said, no, I'm not. She's just here on training as a guidance counselor and so forth. So she'll be shadowing me and so on. And then he said, Miss, you can't leave, Well, you can't leave until me leave. Don't leave till me leave, hear, Miss? And so you find that sometimes they become so attached to you too, because you are showing them what they didn't have at home, or rather in this case, what they don't have.
There you go.
And something happened too where I denied him access to something, and he came back to me the following day and said, Miss, you still love me? And I said, of course, nothing is going to change my love for you, not because that happened, So you'll find that happens sometimes, and that points to the issue of being afraid to acknowledge someone else's feelings, or misreading situations, or being afraid to have hard conversations because you are afraid of the person being upset at you, being mad at you, because you don't want them to leave you.
Right.
You depend on them so much.
Yeah. And in a very real way, what you just described is really an expression of low emotional intelligence. Because a big part of emotional intelligence is our own awareness of and sensitivity to our own feelings, being able to express them, but also to read and understand the feelings of others. And when you look at the extent to which so many of our adults themselves
Mhm.
were emotionally neglected. And so there's this cycle, yeah, because I was emotionally neglected. I'm now an adult. I'm kind of disconnected from my own feelings. I'm gonna be passing that on to my child, and then the child comes up with that deficit, and the cycle continues. You know,
Right. And
so
we find too that sometimes it happens a little subconsciously, because
yes,
you might
That's
slap
true.
the child and the child is crying. And
right.
some parents say, "Why your boss? We're getting on for ball? You getting on for ball?" You know? And so the
Yes.
child feeling wasn't validated, and
Yeah.
they're not saying, okay.
Exactly.
So I learned that if something hurts me and I cry, that means I am sad. But yet still mommy and daddy are asking me, why am I sad? There's nothing for me to be sad or upset about.
Right.
They're
Right.
Mhm.
questioning, and so their whole emotional equilibrium gets thrown off balance.
Thrown.
They don't know
Yeah.
what to do. And then even now you have some adolescents who approach their parents about how they are feeling. Mommy, I am sad. Mommy, I think I'm depressed. I sometimes consider suicide because of this and so forth. And you tell them, say they don't have nothing to worry about. They don't have no JPS to worry about, no water to worry about, no mortgage to pay,
Yes,
whatever.
yes.
And so
I
once
Yeah.
think
again,
I think that's a coping mechanism. And it's our
Yeah,
own ignorance.
but learn behavior as
Yeah,
well.
our own ignorance.
but
And what has,
it's the
it's very important and interesting to note what was passed down to us
Exactly, exactly.
and
yes,
how
and
we
it's
use that
important.
with our children as well.
Mm-hmm.
Because even as a mother, I try to have, not try, I always have, when I need to have the hard conversations with my son.
Right.
I don't try to pretty up and say, oh, everything is going to be okay. You don't need to do this. I said, yes, this happens, but this can also happen.
Right.
And I try to get from him a sense of what he's thinking, feeling about a particular situation, especially if it does something to upset me. And I said, Zaken, when you do this, you upset mommy. So, you know, we need to fix it. We need to fix it so that it doesn't happen again or like this or in this way, so we can have a better thing going.
Right.
You get me?
Yeah.
So I
It's
try to, yeah, and it's a journey, so you learn from one thing, you go on to the next, you learn each stage of their growth and development, because I'm watching him grow and he changes ever so often in terms of his thinking, his thoughts, the conversations that we have. And I try to be very real with him as a mother, and then daddy, has his own role to play. So, we try to have that balance. We're not perfect, but we try to have the balance, that so he can cope. And I mean, as a parent, and I'm not sure if parents come to you for advice, but as a parent, and even now, I'm concerned about, my child and how the whole system is just going, and how dangerous it can be because of the manifestation now of the things that are suppressed or the things that have been bottled up, and people not understanding me, and I want to be understood. And and you mentioned even the suicidal thoughts, and even those who go to the very end. It's very, very crazy.
Yeah. The truth is, as we say here at the This Is Us podcast, is our stories, your stories, our journey, your journeys. So I think for us as adults, especially those of us who are parents, it's important that we are honest with ourselves, that we are on our own journey. We've had our own experiences, and we're in a state of flux, right? None of us have arrived. We're still learning. So know that I have children. I'm every now and then it just hits me so
Children.
yeah, children, right? You move from child to children
Wow.
really quickly. Every now and then it hits me really, really very plainly how much of myself I see in my son Zach and Asiel. And then sometimes I just have to laugh. So I might be by myself and I'm just laughing to myself because, so for example, I mean, when I was growing up, the way my parents tried to teach me the importance of being responsible and taking responsibility. You know, I had to go to the fields. I had to take care of the animals before going to school and so on. I had to walk to school. You know, I walked barefooted to school and all of that. He is in a, it's in an entirely different time, right? He now has access to things that weren't even existent when I was growing up. But at the same time, I still want him to learn the importance of being responsible. And I still want to make sure that I teach him the importance of not wasting things, for example. So I try to do that, but then I remember while doing that, I remember how upset I used to be and how much I used to think my parents were just the most miserable and disgusting people when they were trying to tell me things like, you know, eat this because that's what we have, and be thankful because some people don't have anything to eat. I didn't care about that at the time, but no, I have to be saying those same things to him while at the same time not trying to not put him in a box, because I know that I am aware of how important it is that we not stifle a child's exposure to and discovery of their own emotions so that they can learn how to manage that, because management of the emotions is so important. And the more we curtail and the more we push back at a child's desire to express and to work through the emotions, is the more the child is going to be reserved, for example, and shy and not confident in themselves, right? So, which is why one of the signs that the article says, knowing a likely indication that an adult may have suffered from emotional neglect, is where the topic of the conversation is seldom about themselves. They have difficulty talking about themselves. They will talk about others, but they hardly share about themselves, like we saw in that example. What has been your experience with that, in terms of whether teenagers or maybe even adults who are perhaps very hesitant to share about themselves, or just overall people, adults who exhibit whether low self-esteem or signs of low self-worth? How does that present itself in your experience in the education sector or as a counselor in general?
All right. There are a few things that you said that I wanted to make mention of, or capitalize on rather. So you mentioned that when you were younger, your parents would have you tend to the animals and so on. And just to share before we even get there, that is actually one way in which a person can cope with or treat with emotional neglect in a child or even in a spouse. Giving them something to care for, or rather to practice compassion, because that is the aim of it. You have to get them to practice compassion. So you may get them a pet or a plant or something so that we can tend to that thing, to care for it.
Great. Very practical.
So
Very practical.
That actually helps. All right. And so you were asking about those persons who tend to avoid talking about themselves. That's because they don't know how to label the things that they're experiencing. They don't know how to say that I am unhappy. They don't know how to say that I am sad. And most of the times too, it is because they don't know how you may react to it as well, right? And so they avoid these types of conversations. In the school system, sometimes I may encounter children who, in the counseling realm, we call them difficult clients, where it takes a while for them to open up, right?
Yes.
Like you have to use a chisel and hit
because all the walls are up.
Right. So sometimes it takes a while for them to take down the wall that they would have built,
Yeah.
because it is so hard for them to let someone in.
Yeah.
And following up on that too, I wanted to make this point, and also I think where we want to even talk about a little bit more. Most emotionally neglected people are very giving and caring, but they are not great at self-disclosure, as we said a while ago, or dealing with conflict, which we now realize that conflict is one of our biggest enemies in this society, whether it's be between adults, children, teenagers, relationships. We see on the roads, we see how conflict is disseminating our society, how people get cut down, killed just because they don't know how to label or to step away. I am upset, I'm angry, I'm just going to walk away, take a breather. We see where conflict is now our greatest enemy. We do not know how to resolve conflicts amicably. And I think just because we don't know how to have hard conversations now, how do you deal with situations like these in your own space as a counselor when children or even their parents, because I know you counsel with families as well and with communities, when conflicts arise, the root of it, how do we kind of manage or, navigate through conflict so that it doesn't elevate into a big thing? We want to nip it early. How can we, start the conversations to deal with conflict so that we can have a better looking and behaving society, just to start the conversation around that with among ourselves.
All right, so you started by talking about someone who is very giving, and sometimes those persons are misread as also very caring, but then they don't reciprocate same for self. That is because would have
because there's lack of self-care. Lack of self-care, Kediesh, is itself another strong indication of someone who may have suffered emotional neglect.
Right.
So it all ties in.
Exactly. They don't believe that they are valuable enough to receive love.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And so you find that they do a lot of self-sacrifice, always looking out for others, tending to others, on the phone late at night, ensuring that everything is okay with you, come to your home early morning to wash your clothes because you're not.
And people may think
they're the first to arrive at church. We're the first to arrive at church, the last to leave church. We tend to over exert ourselves in our jobs and so forth. And it is all because you don't think you are worthy enough to receive all of that investment from others. So we need to look out for that.
That's sad. I mean that's sad. No. That is just sad. So you're telling me if my boss sees me overworking myself, what?
if you notice that there's a colleague of yours who just always reach at work early, always be the last to leave, is not as involved sometimes with the social things.
Yes.
So those
so that's an indicator. An indicator.
Not necessarily.
By themselves. By itself, it may not be, because it's a combination of things, right? So just as though if you are going to diagnose somebody, you can't just say, oh, they're always sad, so they're depressed. No, you have to probe the matter, right? But those are still signs that you can look out for. Could you repeat the other question?
So they're not great at self-disclosure or dealing with conflict. So we are now on the topic of, conflict resolution and management.
The whole connection between emotional neglect and a hesitance to deal with conflict or an inability to process conflict and handle conflict.
And so you go overboard when disagreements, should would come up.
Or you sweep it on, you always avoid it, sweep it
Oh,
under the
avoid
carpet, which then leads to a multiplication of situations.
Lots of elephants.
All right, so I would say that there it may be two ends of the spectrum where there are some persons who are very aggressive towards something, and then there are some persons who are avoidant of it. So for those persons who are aggressive towards those things and are not able to have amicable conversations, dialogue about an issue, but they always rile up, getting at them feelings, quote unquote, and always willing to just cut you off. Like,
yes,
I don't care, you mean nothing to me. Me never born come see you.
Yeah,
you
that's just
and you are give me banana, and then you are feed me. So
you're ready to cry and walk away.
Right. So there are those persons who are always ready to just cut you off, because for them, they would have built a wall so high where they would have convinced themselves that they're okay being alone. They're okay by themselves. They are all sufficient, one man island, and that is
self-actualized.
They have just isolated and they're okay right here in their little box. And so they're willing to cut off anybody. They don't want ear, so them need to change. They don't want ear, whoa, what them say affect you, because you should have did vex, you know say some mistake, you should be offended and so forth. Those persons, and they tend to portray having what we call broad back.
Right.
But in reality, they are very thin-skinned.
Fragile.
Very fragile. And they break easily. And that is why they tend to put up this type of facade. And they too, they are bullies as well.
Yes, true. I know lots of those people.
Right. I was talking to my students about bullies, that bullies tend to attack first because they want to drive fear into those that they want,
and then they're usually easily cut down after.
Exactly.
You know, it's
exactly, right. And then on the other side of the spectrum, no, there are those who are just unwilling to have that hard conversation because they are fearful of how you may react, because they don't want to leave. They don't want you to leave them. They don't want to think that you feel differently about them, or you're going to judge them or anything like that. They're just so fearful of it all.
Wow, that's a mouthful. It's a whole series in and of itself. I mean, it's interesting how, you know, one little thing just throw off your entire life, and then you have to go find yourself, you know, fixing yourself and, you know, fix what you mash up indirectly, you know. And when it comes to relationships now, we Teddy shared a few scenarios. Persons persons with those kinds of what you call it, babe, who would suffer emotional neglect when they find themselves, you know, wanting to have a partner, and the two personalities clash, and the partner reminds them of something in the past, or what their mother said, what their father said, or their grandmother said. That one thing can just mash up a good relationship, and the other partner may be left wondering, so this one little thing made this whole thing just mash up, and the years just don't mean anything now, because of one little thing that he said or she did that reminded you of something that happened 15 years ago, that you yourself didn't even realize that was a factor that, you know, that affected you so negatively. And so the entire relationship mash up now because you never realized that one word or thing that your partner did, you know, impacted you so fiercely. I know you have to go run into counselors to fix it, getting help, seeking help, which is good, because I'm glad that there's help to go seek and find, you know. So I'm glad that that is there. But also to when we can identify, as we have been saying, when we're adults and we are we are teachable and we can identify these things that affected us. We mean well. Some of us, we do mean well and we want to seek help, get help, and to try to connect with what hurt us in the past or what may have broken us in the past. We want to fix it. A lot of us in the society, we interact with people every day. You and I, we see people on the road, we see situations, and we want, by just sitting where we are right now and we're looking out, we can readily identify things that we saw today, that we saw last week, that we know that people have issues. People are dealing with issues from the past. People are now coming into, this is what hurt me. This is what has, made me this way. And I want to work on it. I want to fix it, so it's just.
And sometimes too, you can, as you said, you can do some introspection and to see how perhaps you might have misread some situations. Right. I'm just quickly going to share, and I'm sure my dear mother, Melvin Berry, must be watching.
Yes, she is watching. I'm sure she's watching.
Right. Because I'm going to share something from my childhood note, something that I shared with a student recently, that when I was younger, somehow I thought, and the middle child syndrome and so forth.
Oh dear.
I thought that I wasn't as loved by my mother, particularly in over you, Latoya and Tamika. You are the first. Tamika is the last, right?
Oh my God.
When I got older, when I went to college and I, you learn stuff, I debunked that. And I would have attributed it to personalities. So you are, at that time, you would have been, outgoing, and Tamika, talkative, outgoing and so forth. For me, I would always perhaps be in my room or watch movie. I like to be.
I know the roles have switched.
I know, right?
That's it.
And so for me, let me point out, for me, the reason why I think I wasn't as quote unquote loved at the time was because I didn't go a lot of places with my parents. I didn't think that they took me out a lot, right? Mommy would bring you along with her and so forth, but that's because you had that personality. So she was administering to the personalities that she saw emerging in her girls. And then later on, I looked and I said, and I could look back and I could say, well, Mommy used to administer to my personality too, because she would still come to my room, knock on the door, Kediesh, all right? Remember for eat because we never eat, right? We never used to eat. Remember for eat, I used to stay downstairs a lot, late at night, watching TV and so forth. I used to hear Mommy coming down. Kediesh, remember for your bed, remember for your bed, you're gonna make the TV suck out your eye. Right? So she used to attend to the personalities in different ways that she saw in her girls. It wasn't because she didn't like me, it was because she wanted to nurture, or well, to let me continue to use the term, to administer to that side of me, to love me the way in which she saw me, because she saw me as someone who I used to just like my space when you guys just used to always out and about and so forth. And so sometimes when we get to that age and stage and we can recognize that, hey, I misread a situation when I was younger. It is okay. It is okay to take it back. It is okay to forgive yourself too for misjudging and
very important. Forgiving self, very important.
Because if you don't do that, then you will continue to have that certain type of feeling towards self-sabotage, or your sibling, or even yourself, because you wouldn't have navigated the situation properly and now is refusing to process it. And I am so happy that I would have learned to process it. Not that it had affected my upbringing or anything in any way. So I just wanted to highlight that as something personal that I would have come to acknowledge for myself and was
Yes.
able to reframe the situation, because
Yeah.
there are many times
Reframe.
so many adults refuse to reframe a situation, and it is completely okay. It is completely okay. You recognize that's okay. It wasn't the way I thought it was.
Right.
It is all right to reframe the situation so that you can process.
Say
and
it
have
louder for the people in the back.
relationship.
It
Right.
is okay to reframe. Come on. Get a hold of yourself. Let go. Come on. Be adults about it. Be mature about it.
Exactly. Be real about it.
Be real.
Right.
Be honest
Right.
and real. Something didn't mash you up, but you say, you know, let me just look on it again now and see, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
maybe we did
And
too
if
much.
you look at it, and you can be honest, I can say perhaps in the home, I got most of the attention, and you
Say
guys
that
got
again.
most of the attention
Say
outside.
that again.
Because them always did have to check up on me, you know, come always did knock away and ensure that
Right.
I'm okay. So if you guys were to perhaps start thinking that way too, to say, oh, mommy always a checking on Kediesh and a checking on
Right. Why she always checking up on Kediesh?
So it is important that we try to always look at both sides of the coin. And it is okay to, as I said, reassess some situations.
Yeah, and it's okay not to be okay as well, and then be okay afterwards. Let me just put this as a side note. Thank God for the Jamaica Theological Seminary and the well-rounded courses that it offered and still offers.
I know.
Yes, we got the seminarians. Yes, I have to make that as a side note. So yes, from JTS students, yes, Teddy Jones, Latoya Berry-Jones, Kediesh Berry-Rattray, graduates, proud graduates of the Jamaica Theological Seminary. Help us to be the better persons that we are today by really bringing reality to us to make us see how the world works and we're still on that journey. That's why we are here tonight, sharing our stories. Thank you, Kediesh, sharing your story. We're still on this journey. We're still discovering self. There are going to be many, many more things for us to reframe and to reflect on and just to move on, you know. So it's very, very, very important. So very important. We have a comment here on our platform. Let's go.
Right. So just want to shout out those viewing on YouTube. And so we have Matsia saying great topic, and Andre M, eye-opening conversation. Spacey Shepherd Boy 29 says that's true in relation to what you shared about the importance of reframing. All right, so we've been chatting with Kediesh Berry-Rattray, guidance counselor, life coach, and counselor in general, and we're talking about emotional neglect. What are the signs in adults in particular that a person may have suffered emotional neglect? And when you spot the signs, what can you do? We're going to take a quick break, and on the other side of the break, as we get into the final segment of episode 11, we're going to look at a couple more signs quickly, and then we want to focus a bit more on how can you heal and improve and grow if you yourself identify that, hey, even from this evening's show, that, you know, maybe I have some emotional neglect issues that I need to work through, or, you know, I think my partner may be showing some signs here. What can you do? How can you work through that? Stay with us. We'll come back on the other side of episode 11 of that This Is Us podcast. All right, and we're back.
We're back.
All right, so what are some of the other signs of in adults that a person may have suffered emotional neglect in childhood? From the article from Psychology Today, they'll just share a couple more quickly. They minimize their own needs, and Kediesh spoke to us about that. Serving everybody else and no time for yourself, no time for self-care.
They have trouble showing and communicating how they feel.
Right?
And we have seen how negatively this can affect an individual. And we just want to for all our listeners out there who are listening and watching, it's okay to express how you feel. It's okay to be comfortable with what you're feeling. As Kediesh was saying, label. Sometimes you don't know how to label or label correctly. Things may have gone wrong, but seeing that we are here where we are now, how can we at this point, be able to label how we're feeling and be comfortable talking about such feeling?
Yeah, especially for us fellas.
Fellas, talk some more of that.
Fellas.
Yeah, I'm not a fella. Go fella. Go fella.
Fellas, we come into this thing with a bit of a deficit. Naturally, we are not as expressive with our feelings, but we have to work hard at it. In the last couple of days, I've been seeing so many stories of men committing suicide, men just ready to give up, and it's really serious. We have to come to grips with our emotions because it's an important part of our mental health. We're gonna deal with that on an episode coming up soon, but naturally it's more difficult for us, but we have to do it, right? And then to adults who may have been neglected emotionally as children, are uncomfortable, very uncomfortable when people around them openly speak about and share their feelings. They may freeze up or start apologizing unnecessarily, or they may even leave the space altogether because you are so disconnected from your own feelings that seeing a person in your space
Emotional intelligence
there you go.
Emotional
So
intelligence.
openly share about their feelings, it makes you very uncomfortable. All right. So what to do if you think someone has childhood emotional neglect? Kediesh, what are some of the things that can actually be done? You gave a very good practical suggestion earlier on with giving the person a plant or a pet to take care of. What else? As we come to wrapping up the show this evening.
All right, so it's very important that you examine your emotional needs. What are those things that you would like? How it is that you want to feel loved? What are your love languages? How can you even love yourself? Try to practice self-love and self-care. Very important. Try to talk about your feelings. Start with small things. It's okay to start with small things before you try to delve into the childhood heart matters. And 100% of the times, those heart matters will require counseling.
Yeah.
And so reach out to someone for that help. It's important to also be specific about your needs. Don't shuffle or as we call it,
generalize
and so forth. Be specific about what you want, about what you need, about your expectations, and find that this tends to affect a lot of relationships. And it was even in one of the scenarios that was shared in the article where the male always had to
choose for the girlfriend because she can't make up her mind.
She can't make up her mind, right? So be specific about your needs and your wants. And as I said before, practice compassion. You can practice self-compassion as well as you can practice with others, or until you get there, you can get something small, get a small plant, talk to it in the morning, water it, put it out for sun, Get a pet. You can start with a small pet, like a fish, very low maintenance and so forth. And pay attention to your emotions. Recognize, and it's okay you can journal these things too.
Or use a mirror.
Recognize those things that cause you to feel upset, sad, angry, overly hurt, and because when you go home, you can write it down and say, today I was hurt because teacher said this or my boss did that. and you can try to reflect and think about what could have possibly caused you to feel that much hurt or pain because of that particular reason. All right. So pay attention to your feelings and emotions. Be mindful to not become impulsive. All right. Because we may tend to become reactive to situations instead of reflective. So it's important to reflect about the
and not to
situation.
gaslight.
Right.
Yeah.
So reflect on situations and see how best you can navigate it in the future.
Yeah, the reflective life is something that we don't talk about enough. And it is so important. And again, you spoke about journaling, very, very powerful and so easy to do, right?
Yeah.
But overall, loving your spouse, loving your partner means helping them where you see there might be some cracks in the foundation. And I'm glad that you spoke about compassion. And it's all about support, the network of friends, family, helping the person to take small steps and celebrate the small steps, right? Now, talking about celebrating stuff a while ago. So we are in big trouble. All of us are in big trouble. Daddy's going to beat all of us because Daddy's a seminarian too. Daddy went to JTS as well, right? So here on the This Is Us podcast, it's our story. Your story. So I went to JTS.
Yes, Daddy, of course.
I became a lecturer at JTS. And then Daddy came to JTS and he became my student, right? And then years later.
Don't you think we were going to try to date stuff like, so how did I get into the mix? Yes, Daddy, pick up yourself. JTS grad.
So I went from being his lecturer to being his son-in-law. And of course, both Kediesh and Latoya were at JTS at the same time. So only mommy hasn't been to JTS yet.
And Tamiko.
And
Uncle Richie and Uncle Cordell.
Yeah.
Yes, Kediesh. That's I know. We have to bring,
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
But you'll meet Cordell soon, and you'll meet Uncle Richie soon, and all of that. But so big up, Daddy. But for folks, seriously, look, as we say, life is in relationships, and relationships are life, and the quality of our relationships determine the quality of our lives. We don't always get to determine how we start, but we always have an opportunity to determine our present and to determine how we end. So let's keep working on ourselves. Final word, Kediesh.
Yes,
you come down to the end.
Pick my hand up.
I see that hand.
I want to share before we sign out for tonight. Adults who are in relationship, some signs that you can look for in your partner, if it is that you can sense that somehow there's a little disconnect. So some signs that you can look for is your conversations are always fact-based. So there's no deepness to it, always on the surface, discussing what's happening on the television, discussing the weather, discussing the children. There is no depth to your conversation. You can also
authentic.
Right. You may also experience loneliness, even though you are married or you're in a committed relationship, but somehow you feel lonely because there's no connection, right? There is no bond between you and the person. Also, there is a lack of or no warmth or expression of love given towards you or your partner outside of sex. So sex most times becomes the buffer for the relationship to show the person that you care for them or you love them. Say, hey, I'm here. As well as the person may always tend to be on the defense, just always have to prove themselves right. always have to, just prove a point, tend to feel attacked when you're talking to them and so on.
Wow.
So really look out for those things.
For those,
And
right.
right. So, I have to share because it's something that I want to see affecting and causing the death to relationships, as well as a counselor, I wish to share with any parent or prospective parents who are on tonight too, because this is something that we don't want to see be perpetuated, especially the fact that we are how many years away now from 2030, and we want
Not
to
far.
Not much. just
far.
for
just
Jamaica,
7 years.
right? A place where we can live, grow, have families, and
Yes,
they have
raise their
added,
families, do
have
business, yeah.
businesses, and they have added
Yeah,
retire
yeah.
as well,
Yeah,
and not for Jamaica, but for our personal growth, to look out for the growth and development of our family. So parents, just try your best to show an interest in your child. Whatever activity, curricular activity they may want to do at school, find a way to put it in the budget for them to get involved in something at school or at church. You want to allow them to be expressive. Is it that they want to do karate, to dance, join the football team, to be an illustrator, whatever it is, show an interest. Also, in their work, when they get home from school, look through assignments with them. Don't just always reprimand the child. Why you get 2 out of 10 wrong? You should have get 10 out of 10. You're brighter than this. You're better than that. Or don't compare the child either. If the child have an older or younger sibling or cousin or whoever it may be, don't compare your child.
Things.
Wrong.
All right. It's important for you to at all times avoid verbally abusing your child by showing cold shoulder to your child's feelings or saying insensitive things. Or, Jamaicans, we tend to just speak. We are expressive by nature.
Yeah.
All right. However, we have to be so guarded when it comes onto the rearing and upbringing of our children, and be mindful of what we really have to bridle our tongues. We have to take on that spirit now of bridling the tongue when it comes on to raising our children. All right. So something spill. Nobody tell the child you're clumsy, you can't hold on back good, or you're so workless. And
those are the first things that come out.
That's so much worse.
Exactly. Your finger, they make a butter, a slippery finger you have.
Yes.
So those things that to us are not really nothing, but you don't know the damage that you are creating in that child's self-esteem and self-worth.
It's so true.
And right, it's important to express love and care for your child. Let them know that they're wanted, they're appreciated.
Loved and appreciated.
From school, first thing you do, hug them, kiss them. Something, let them know that they were missed. You never see them for 8 hours of the day. Sometimes some of them end up going to after school care.
Right.
You don't see them until probably 8 o'clock. You don't see them from 7 to 8. That's more than 12 hours for the day. And the first thing you do is say, what make your clothes, what make your school clothes off dirty so, what make your shirt out of your pants, what make your shoes dirty so.
Yeah.
Look how long mommy not see me. This is the first thing mommy have to say to me. So, just be mindful of those things. Practice. And these are small things you can do to practice. Hug your child.
Yeah. Hugs. All right. Listen, Kediesh, you're done gone into part 2 already, But we have to, we can never exhaust. These are the basic things, but the things that we're just not getting right. So we're going to have to come back and talk some more about that, because there's so much more to explore, because the emotional stability in childhood, it follows us all the way through.
Sure does.
And you have to start from even while the child is in the womb, right? But that's, as I said, that's a whole other episode right there. But we're gonna come back, and as I said, we're trying to plan a special one where we have the whole family, all the families. So
and the crew.
so we went to JTS. Mom went to UE and FIU. And Tamika went to UTech. So we don't want any of the schools to get left out. And Cornell went to UE. Right. But you get to meet the whole class. All of us.
She went to Heart, yes.
She went to Heart.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Once you start calling names, I'm just calling you see why people get this
So
problem.
big up Heart, big up UE, big
Yes.
up UTech, big up
Big up
FIU.
education.
Big up
Yes.
Whatever your pursuit,
Yeah.
whatever your vocation, go hard at it and do it well.
Mhm.
Right? And I mean, parents, again, look, not every child is going to be a doctor. Not every child is going to be a lawyer. Not every child is going to be, the so-called big things. Every child is intelligent.
Mhm.
Stop asking the child, how intelligent are you?
Ask
And
them,
start
how
asking,
are you?
how are you intelligent?
Mhm.
You'll hear more on that some other
Yes.
time.
And I want to big up mommy and daddy for investing in
You
your
know?
children. We appreciate
Yes.
you all the time.
Thank you so much.
Yes. So
Follow the channel at That This Is Us podcast on YouTube. This is just Jones Clan on Instagram and Facebook. Subscribe, spread the information, share the videos, send your comments, send your questions, and let's keep improving. Let's go for great, go for excellent in all that we do.
it was great having you, Mrs. Berry-Rattray.
With God at the
It was
center.
great
Next time.
being
United.
here.
Yeah.
So much
Thanks,
for
Ken.
having me.
Yeah, man. See you soon on set once again for This Is Us. I'm Teddy Jones.
And I am Latoya Berry-Jones.
And
This is us.